Tonight's story is called The Little Mermaid, A Voice Remembered, a cozy story made just for you. Hello, dear dreamer. You've done enough for today. Let your breath slow. Let your body soften. Nothing is required of you now. Tonight's story is one of sea and storm, of curiosity that becomes courage, and a voice that remembers itself. Inhale the day. Exhale the weight of it. You're safe here. Let us begin. Far below the wavering skin of the sea, where sunlight broke into ribbons and scattered gold across coral towers, there lived a young mermaid who moved through water as if currents themselves had shaped her bones. She was strong, not in the way of storms, but in the way of tides, steady, certain, inevitable. Her tail moved with practiced power, cutting through drifting gardens of kelp, past anemones that closed and opened like breathing mouths, and past fish that flashed silver and vanished again into shadowed reefs. She knew every pathway through the coral city. She knew which currents pulled warm, which pulled cold. She knew how to slip between rising bubbles without breaking their fragile skins. Others swam with her often. Siblings, friends, younger ones still learning how to guide their fins without stirring chaos in water. And she naturally slowed, not because she had to, but because she could. She curved her tail less sharply. She eased her speed. She let the younger ones feel clever beside her. She let the water remain calm around the group. No one asked her to do this, but she noticed how gatherings felt easier when she did. And she liked ease. She liked harmony. She liked the way the sea settled when she adjusted herself, ever so slightly. It felt responsible. Yet sometimes, when the others grew tired and turned back toward home, she kept going. Just a little farther, a little higher, just a little closer to the shimmering ceiling of the world. Curiosity always arrived first, bright and light-footed like a school of darting fish that could not be caught. What lived above the surface? What moved the air instead of water? What made the strange thunder that sometimes rolled across the waves? No one encouraged these questions, but no one could stop them either. And when the others called her back, she always returned, though not without a last glance upward, not without a small tightening in her chest, a quiet refusal to believe that the world ended here. Not rebellion, not yet. Just the beginning of a truth that would not stay buried. There was more to life than the current she had been born into, and one day she would find it. This was the kingdom of currents, ordered, ancient, and beautiful. Voices carried differently here. Sound moved softly, spreading wide. Nothing needed to be shouted. Everything was heard. In the central hall, where columns curved like the ribs of a whale, the Sea King ruled. His presence was vast and quiet, like deep water that never fully reveals its floor. Around him moved attendants, messengers, guardians of borders and tides. And among them, always noticeable, though never demanding notice, was the young mermaid who knew the paths of the sea better than most twice her age. She swam gracefully through gatherings. She knew where to pass wide, so others did not feel crowded. She dipped her tail low when elders approached. She circled children gently so they could match her pace without strain. The kingdom ran smoothly, because she understood flow. But there were rules here too, unspoken ones, old as coral. Do not disturb the surface. Don't approach the air world. Do not draw the attention of what lives above. Everyone knew these rules the way fish know migration routes, not through instruction, through inheritance. At council gatherings, elders sometimes spoke of storms, of nets lowered from above, of ships that scraped the sea like knives, of creatures who walked on solid earth and breathed air. Danger lived above. Curiosity, they warned, could cost lives. She listened, as she always did, attentive, respectful, still. But when the meetings ended and the halls empty, she often remained for a moment longer, hovering near the high arches where the light fell brightest. Light that did not belong to the sea. Light that belonged to the world beyond. No one scolded her. No one forbade her. She was trusted, reliable, steady, and she did not break the rules. Not outwardly. Yet sometimes, when patrols swam the lower trenches and the coral streets quieted, she moved upward alone, just to the border where the water grew thin and bright. She never crossed it. She simply floated beneath it, hair lifting in the gentle pull of tides, eyes fixed on the trembling mirror above. From here, she could hear strange things, rhythmic knocks, distant thunder, a voice once, muffled, broken by the waves, but unmistakably human. Her heart beat faster then, not in fear, in recognition. She turned away before anyone could see her there, returned to the city, resumed her place in the flow of things. No one knew how close she came to the forbidden line. No one saw the quiet spark in her eyes when she pulled herself back. Because she was careful. Because she understood order. Because she knew how to contain herself. But the questions kept swimming, and each time she returned from the edge of the surface, the sea felt just a little smaller than before. It happened on a night when the sea was restless. Currents shifted strangely through the coral city. Tiny creatures tucked themselves into crevices. Long strands of kelp leaned toward the pull of the distant tides. Above, the surface shimmered more brightly than usual. Not with daylight, but with scattered gold, trembling and alive. She felt it before she understood it. A vibration through the water, a hum passing downward like the ringing of a bell struck far away. Sound from the air world. She left the coral streets quietly, slipped past the sleeping gardens, rose through open blue water where nothing blocked her ascent. The higher she swam, the lighter the sea became. The pressure eased, the water cooled, the light sharpened. At last, she reached the border. That thin, trembling veil where water met air. She had hovered here before, but tonight was different. Above the surface, something moved. A shape, large, solid, carved against the night sky. A vessel of wood and rope, firelight flickering along its edges, human voices drifting down in broken fragments of sound. She should have turned away. She knew the rule. She knew the warnings. But curiosity, that bright, darting creature, had grown too large to contain. Slowly, silently, she rose. Her eyes broke the surface first. Cool air kissed her skin, strange and sharp, carrying scents she had never known, smoke, salt, something warm and living. She lifted her head just to see enough. A ship gliding across the dark sea, lanterns swaying, figures moving upon a solid deck, laughter spilling into the night. Humans, real, not myth, not warning, not story. Her heart beat hard, not with fear, but with wonder. One figure stood apart at the edge of the ship. a young man, hair touched by firelight, gaze lifted toward the stars. He spoke to someone beside him. His voice rolled across the water, distorted, softened, yet unmistakably alive. She didn't understand his words, but she felt the tone. Ease, belonging, freedom. Something in her chest answered, quiet but undeniable. A wave struck the side of the ship suddenly. Laughter rose, movement shifted. She dipped instinctively, careful not to be seen. From the waterline, she watched. The ship moved on. The voices faded. The lanterns became distant stars drifting along the horizon. Only when the last light disappeared did she sink fully beneath the surface again. The sea closed over her head. Sound returned to softness. Currents returned to slow drift. But something had changed. The world was no longer only the sea. There was another place, another way of moving, another kind of life. And she had seen it, not imagined it, seen it. She swam downward toward the coral city, her tail cutting the water in swift control strokes. She did not break any rule. She didn't cross onto land, and she didn't speak of what she had witnessed. But in the quiet of the descending blue, a new knowing settled inside her. The world was larger than the one that she had been born into. And one day, somehow, she would touch it again. By the next tide cycle, the coral city knew. Not because she told anyone, not because she spoke of ships or lanterns or voices in the air, but because currents carry stories the way wind carries scent. A watch guardian had seen a ripple near the surface. A patrol had noticed displaced bubbles rising where no storm had passed. An elder had felt the tremor of unfamiliar vibration through the reef. And so, when she entered the central hall that day, the water around her felt slightly different. Still, waiting. The Sea King regarded her from his stone throne carved with whalebone and pearl. His gaze was deep and patient, the kind of depth that does not need raising voice or fin to be understood. "Child of the tides," he said at last, his voice traveling slowly through the water. "You have been near the border." It was not accusation. It was statement, truth surfacing. She didn't bow. She didn't flee. She simply inclined her head in acknowledgement. "I swam high," she answered, calm, respectful, unashamed. A murmur passed through the gathered court. Not outrage, unease. Another elder spoke, her fins trailing long ribbons of sea silk. "The surface is not our world," she said. "It is unpredictable, violent, hungry. Those who live there do not know the sea's language." A younger guardian added carefully, "The balance is kept because we do not cross." She listened to them all, not defensive, not rebellious. Listening was one of her strengths. But as they spoke, she noticed something else. None of them had ever been to the border. None of them had seen what she had seen. None of them spoke from experience, only inheritance. The Sea King's gaze softened. "You are capable," he said. "Trusted, strong. This is why this matters." He didn't forbid her. He didn't punish her. He didn't raise his voice. He simply laid down the rule as it had always been. The surface is not for us. You will not go there again. The hall quieted. The current settled. Everyone expected agreement. And she could have given it, It would have been easy, polite, harmonious. She understood how to do that. She had done it all her life. But something in her, small, bright, persistent, stirred. Not loud, not reckless, just clear. She met the Sea King's eyes. "I understand," she said. And she did. She understood the fear, the history, the wish to keep the world safe. But understanding did not erase the image of the lantern light on the water. It didn't erase the sound of human laughter. It didn't erase the knowledge that another world existed, real and reachable. She did what she had always done. She contained the spark. She did not argue. She did not protest. She simply accepted the rule outwardly, while inwardly the quiet refusal took firmer shape. Not rebellion, not yet, just a truth settling into place. One day, she would choose for herself. And when she swam from the hall, her movements were graceful as ever, controlled as ever, responsible as ever. No one saw the difference, but the sea itself seemed to notice. A new current forming beneath still water, a tide preparing to rise. The sea changed its breathing before the storm arrived. Currents that usually moved like slow ribbons began to twist. Water cooled in sudden threads. Fish tucked themselves into coral hollows. Long kelp forests bowed low as if in prayer. Above, the surface darkened. Clouds swallowed the moon. Wind pressed hard upon the skin of the water. The border between sea and sky blurred into a trembling, silver, black veil. She felt it from deep below, a calling, a vibration running through her bones. Not curiosity this time, urgency. She swam upward, faster than she meant to, stronger than she usually allowed herself. Her tail cut through rising turbulence. Bubbles tore past her shoulders. By the time she reached the upper waters, the storm had broken open. Waves lifted like mountains. Rain struck the surface in staccato silver needles. Thunder rolled so deeply it shook the coral floors below. And there, pitched helplessly upon the chaos, was the ship. The same shape she had seen once before, now real, vulnerable, and breaking. Lanterns swung wildly, ropes snapped, voices shouted. Not laughter now, but fear. She hovered just beneath the surface, the water lifting and dropping around her. She knew the rule. She knew the warning. She knew the command spoken in the hall. But knowledge and reality are not the same thing. Up there, lives were in danger, and she was strong. Strong enough to move faster than the currents, strong enough to dive where others could not, strong enough to hold weight in rushing water. The thought arrived clear and simple. If someone must act, let it be me. Not rebellion, not defiance, responsibility. She broke the surface. Rain struck her skin. Wind caught in her hair. The world of air roared around her, violent, vast, alive. A wave rose higher than the mast. The ship tilted. A figure was thrown from the deck, vanishing into the dark water. She did not hesitate. She dove, down through churning foam, down through cold, thrashing current. She found him sinking, unconscious, limbs loose, hair drifting like seaweed. The same young man she had once watched beneath the stars, now pale, helpless, human, fragile. She wrapped her arms around him, turning her body toward the shore, guiding by instinct older than thought. Stroke after powerful stroke, she carried him through the storm. Waves slammed, water burned with effort, but her body knew what to do. She did not stop. When at last the seafloor rose into the sand and rock, She pushed herself forward until the water shallowed at her tail, found ground. She laid him gently upon the shore. Rain washed over both of them. Thunder rolled away. The worst of the storm began to pass. She sat beside him, watching his chest rise and fall. He lived. Relief loosened something inside of her, but already distant voices approached along the beach. Human voices. She knew she could not be seen, so she did what she had learned to do so well. She withdrew, quietly, quickly, back into the sea. She watched from the shallows as others gathered around him, lifting him, calling his name, carrying him away toward a warm shelter. No one saw her. No one knew what had saved him. The sea closed around her once more, but it did not feel the same. The boundary had been crossed, not in curiosity, not in wonder, in action, in choice, in strength turned outward. And as she swam back toward the coral city, light still flickered far above, and she knew there was no returning to the life she had lived before. Not after this. Few ever swam towards the farthest trench, not because it was forbidden, but because the sea itself grew uneasy there. Light thinned quickly. Currents lost their predictable paths. The water felt heavier, as if memory itself sank and gathered in this place. She followed the descent anyway, past the last gardens of coral, past the schools of fish that turned away before reaching the border, past stone formations that resembled ribs of ancient creatures long fallen to the seafloor. Here, sound changed. It didn't echo, it swallowed. And instinct, old, animal, and wise, whispered that one should not linger in such waters. But she was strong, and she had chosen. At the base of the trench stood a dwelling grown from the shipwrecked timber, twisted iron, and coral that had no business growing so deep. Objects from the surface hung in slow suspension, mirrors clouded with salt, chains softened by rust, bottles holding nothing but dark. The water around the dwelling did not move, not with current, not with tide. It simply waited. She approached, and from within, a figure stepped forward. At first, the witch appeared radiant, skin glowing as moonlight and water, hair drifting in slow, luxurious waves, fingers adorned with rings that caught the light that reached this depth. She might have been beautiful, until you looked too long. Then you saw. The nostrils flared just a little too wide, the eyes a shade too sharp, too knowing, the mouth smiling, yet pulling downward at the corners, like a smile learned, not felt. A glamour worn like a silk veil, convincing from a distance, unsettling up close, and yet impossible to look away from. Her voice flowed smoothly through the water. I wondered when you'd come. Not threatening, not kind, simply certain. The mermaid did not bow, did not retreat, but every fin, every scale, every instinct in her body knew this was a place where choices could not be undone. The witch studied her, not with malice, but with appraisal, like a jeweler weighing a stone. You've seen the surface, the witch said. You've crossed the line your kingdom pretends does not exist. The mermaid met her gaze steadily. I have. The witch's smile deepened, that downward curve becoming more visible now. And now, the sea feels smaller. Not a question, a recognition. Silence gathered, thick, pressure heavy, trench deep. Then the witch turned, gesturing towards the strange relics hanging in the still water. "I deal in crossings," she said. "Bodies that change, borders that dissolve, lives that rewrite themselves." Her voice was smooth, but the sea around her felt cold. "Every crossing has a cost," the witch added, "and not all who enter my waters leave unchanged." The mermaid's heart beat once, steady and strong. She had not come here to turn back. "Tell me," she said, and the witch's smile widened, glamorous, terrible, inevitable. "I wish to go where I have already been," she answered, "to a world that calls to me." The witch's downward curving smile stirred. "You wish to cross a border your body was not shaped for," she said. "You wish to enter a realm where your strength will not serve you as it does here, where the currents do not carry you, where the ground does not give way, where your tail will not belong." The mermaid listened, because listening was something she did well. "And you wish," the witch continued, "to do this without tearing the worlds apart." A pause. "Yes," the mermaid whispered. The witch circled her once, slowly, appraising the way a tide studies shoreline. "You are careful," she said. "Responsible. You hold yourself so others do not have to feel your weight." The words landed softly but precisely. "You could continue as you are," the witch went on. "Contain your sea. Carry the harmony of your world. Remain admired, trusted, relied upon." The witch leaned closer. "But you have tasted the surface, and now you know the truth." The mermaid's jaw tightened slightly. The truth needed no words. The sea had become too small. The witch turned back to the table. "There is a way," she said, "to cross without shattering, to walk where you now swim, to stand where you now float." The witch lifted the vial. "But every crossing demands balance. To gain one form, another must be surrendered." The mermaid watched the shimmering liquid. "What is the cost?" she asked. The witch's eyes gleamed, sharp, dark, unblinking. "Your voice." The water seemed to still even further. "Not your ability to think, not your will, not your memory, but the sound that rises from your chest and enters the world. The current by which others know your inner tide." The witch's smile curved, beautiful and wrong. "You will walk on land. You will have legs. You will move among humans as one of them. But you will not speak. You will not sing. And you will not shape the air with your truth." The mermaid's heart beat once, deep and heavy. "And if I choose to return?" she asked. The witch's expression softened, almost pity. "You will not be able to return as you are. This body will belong to the surface. And if you do not find your place there," the witch's voice lowered, smooth as oil, "then you will dissolve into sea foam, not dying, not living, simply dispersed." No threat, no dramatics, just the terms of the crossing. The mermaid closed her eyes. She thought of the coral city, the younger swimmers matching their pace to hers, the sea king's steady gaze, the quiet role she played so well. She thought of the storm, the human weight in her arms, the sound of his voice on the wind, the vastness of the world above. And she felt, beneath everything, the spark that never had gone out, curiosity, then refusal. not to be contained forever. She opened her eyes. "I accept," she said. The witch did not celebrate, did not gloat. She simply uncorked the vial. "Then drink," she said. The liquid moved into the water like a ribbon of light, gathering at the mermaid's lips. The mermaid took it in. The change began at once. Pain flickered, sharp, bright, undeniable, as her tail split, reshaped, fused into 2 trembling legs. Scales softened into skin. Fins drew back into shoulders. The water felt suddenly foreign against her body. She opened her mouth to breathe, and no sound came. No gasp, no cry, no voice, only silence. The witch watched calmly. "It is done," she said. The mermaid hovered in the dark trench, legs drifting awkwardly beneath her, hair floating like seaweed, throat empty of sound. She had crossed the border, and there was no turning back. Above them, the surface waited. She rose, not swimming now, but lifted by current she could no longer control, drawn upward through layers of water that felt thinner with each passing moment. Her new legs drifted beneath her, uncertain, heavy, unused. She didn't panic. She adapted, because adaptation was another form of strength she knew well. Light brightened, water cooled. The ceiling of the sea shimmered above her like trembling glass. And then she broke through. Air rushed across her skin, cold, sharp, real. She drew breath, instinctively, and though no sound came, life entered her chest all the same. Waves carried her gently forward, rolling her toward the shoreline she had seen from below. Sand met her feet, not soft like the seafloor silt, but firm, grainy, shifting under her weight. She tried to stand. Her legs wobbled. She adjusted, found balance. Slowly, she rose upright, tall, still, present. The sky reached wide above her, pale with early dawn. Clouds moved freely. Wind touched her face and lifted her hair in ways that water never had. She looked back once. The sea lay behind her, endless, breathing, familiar, not gone, just behind. Ahead of her, land rolled outward, rocks, grasses, distant shapes of trees, the faint outline of buildings beyond. A new world. Not yet welcoming, but not rejecting. Simply there, waiting. She took a step forward, then another. Each movement strange, effortful, unfamiliar, but hers. No voice rose from her throat, but her presence remained intact. She was still herself, changed, but not erased. And as the first sunlight of morning touched her skin, warming what once had been scales, she felt something settle quietly into place. She had crossed. Not as victim, not as lost soul, as a girl who had chosen. And whatever came next, she would meet it the same way she always had, with awareness, with strength, and with a spark of defiance that had never truly left her. Days passed. She learned the rhythm of the land, how feet met earth, how balance shifted without water's lift, how muscles tired in new ways, how wind carried scent instead of current, and how silence could live outside the sea as well as within it. The humans who found her near the shore had taken her in. They wrapped her in cloth, gave her food, watched her with curiosity and cautious kindness. She couldn't speak to explain herself, so she communicated with gesture, with gaze, with action. And she was good at this. She helped where she could. She noticed what others missed. She adjusted herself to the rhythm of each space, each task, each person. On land as in sea, she understood flow. And slowly, people trusted her. They smiled at her, made room for her, invited her into the daily movements. She belonged, not fully, and not easily, but enough. And then there was him, the one she had carried from the storm. He came to the household one afternoon, seeking those who had rescued him. He didn't recognize her. How could he? When she stood before him on two legs, clothed in human fabric, hair bound back from her face. But something in her presence felt familiar to him. He spoke to her. She listened. He laughed once at something small. She felt the sound in her chest like a memory of waves striking shore. He walked with her in gardens. He showed her the world of trees, of stone and sky. He spoke of voyages, of responsibility, and the strange weight of being an heir to a kingdom. She listened, and in listening, she let him be seen. Not as a prince, but as a human who, like her, stood between worlds. Affection grew quietly, without urgency, without demand. She did not need to possess him, didn't need to claim him. She simply allowed connection to unfold until the day the household whispers began. A marriage had been arranged. A princess from another land, a union to secure alliances. The prince was to wed. She felt no collapse, no shattering, only a stillness, the kind that arrives when truth stands plainly before you. She walked alone that evening to the edge of the sea. The waves greeted her like old friends. Salt touched her skin. Wind carried the hush of tides. She knew the terms of the bargain. If she did not find her place in this world, she would dissolve into sea foam. Not punished, not damned, simply returned to the elements. She looked out at the horizon where the sky met the water. She had crossed to change herself so the world could not hold her, and now she saw the deeper truth. Changing herself had never been the answer. The sea had not been too small. The world had simply asked her to compress what was so vast. She stepped forward towards the waves, not in despair, in clarity. But before she reached the water, footsteps sounded behind her. The prince. He had followed. He stood beside her, looking at the sea, then at her. He spoke softly. "I don't know why, but when you're near, I feel as though I'm standing at the edge of something important." She turned to him. She couldn't speak, but she met his gaze, fully, steadily, without shrinking. And in that gaze, he saw something true. Not dependence, not longing, not need, but presence. Recognition passed between them. Simple, human, and mutual. He took her hand, not to claim her, but to stand with her. And in that moment, she understood. Love was not the reason to change herself. Love was the place she could arrive as she already was. The wind lifted her hair, the sea breathed behind her, and somewhere deep in her chest, where her voice had once lived, a new sound formed. Not yet spoken, but ready. The tide was rising. Small waves reached for her feet, curling around her ankles like familiar hands. The prince stood still beside her, saying nothing now, simply sharing the horizon. She turned towards the sea, toward the world that had shaped her body, toward the world she had tried to leave, toward the world she now understood had never truly rejected her. She stepped forward. Water wrapped around her legs, cool, known, remembering. Behind her, the prince called out, a question, a plea, but she did not turn, because this choice was not about leaving him. It was about returning to herself. With each step deeper into the waves, the human weight of her legs began to soften. Skin shimmered, form shifted, water welcomed her without resistance. And when she dove forward, the sea received her like breath returning to lungs. Her tail was restored. Then her fins unfurled. Currents lifted her. She didn't dissolve. She didn't vanish. Because she hadn't failed. She'd learned. Below the surface, the trench waited. The witch's dwelling waited. But this time, the mermaid did not descend in uncertainty. She arrived as one who knew herself. The witch stood in the still water, glamour flickering faintly across her features. "You return," the witch said, not surprised, not even disappointed, just observing. The mermaid floated before her, steady. "I crossed," she said, and her voice rang clear in the water, warm and resonant, unmistakably her own. The witch's eyes sharpened. "You accepted the bargain." "I accepted a path," the mermaid replied, "and I walked it to its truth." Silence gathered in the trench. The witch studied her, really studied her now, as though seeing her for the first time without the glamour's veil. "And what is your truth?" the witch asked. The mermaid's tail moved in a slow, powerful sweep. "I do not need to become smaller to belong. I don't need to change my shape to be loved. And I don't need to give away my voice to keep peace." The witch's smile curved, downward, knowing. "Then take it back," she said simply. "Nothing kept it but your belief that that was the price." And in that moment, the mermaid understood. The vial, the potion, the bargain, they had never held her voice. Only her willingness to surrender it had. She opened her mouth and sang, not loudly, not dramatically, just a single note, pure, steady, unmistakably hers. The water trembled with it. The trench stones vibrated. The glamour around the witch flickered and thinned, revealing what had always been there. Not monstrous, not powerful. Simply another being who had built herself on bargains and belief. The witch closed her eyes. "As you wish," she said, and the sea released the last thread of the spell. The mermaid rose through the water, faster now, lighter, free. She broke the surface once more, not as someone escaping, but as someone arriving. On the shore, the prince stood waiting. She stepped from the waves, water streaming from her hair, moonlight tracing her skin. She opened her mouth, and her voice carried into the night, calm, steady, and real. Not a song to enchant, a voice to speak, to choose, to say who she was. And the prince listened, not spellbound, not bewitched, simply hearing her. And together they walked back towards the world, not because she needed it, because she chose it. With her sea inside her, with her voice returned, with her defiance softened into wisdom, and her strength intact. And so, dear dreamer, her story comes to rest, not with a triumph, not with a rescue, but with a remembering. A girl who crossed oceans of change, who softened herself for harmony, who reshaped her body for belonging, who traveled to the edges of who she thought she must be, only to discover she had never truly been lost. Her voice was not taken from her. It was only waiting for the moment she chose herself again. And perhaps, in some quiet way, her journey feels familiar. The times you've held back to keep peace, the moments you've shifted shape to fit rooms not built for you, the tenderness you've carried for others, even when your heart grew tired. If so, let her story be a gentle reminder. You don't have to disappear to be loved. You don't have to change your shape to belong. And you don't have to quiet your truth to keep the world calm. Your voice is something that can't be taken. It's something that waits until you're ready to use it again. Now, the sea is calm. The shore is quiet, and the wind moves softly across the water. And you, dear dreamer, may rest. You've been listening to Nicki Cozy Stories, written by Nicole T. Woodard. May your dreams be gentle. May your sleep be deep. And may you always remember your voice was never lost. Good night.